Welcome to another edition of RCE. Again, this is Brock Palen. You can find us online at rce-cast.com, where you can find the entire back catalog of over 100 episodes about high-performance computing, research computing, and other topics. Again, I have Jeff Squyres from Cisco Systems and one of the authors of OpenMPI. Jeff, thanks again for your time.
Hey, Brock, how's it going? It's getting to be hot in the summer here. I don't know if it's hot up there in Michigan, but it's certainly hot here in Kentucky.
Yeah, the humidity has been the issue here. It's like swimming outside sometimes. You think it's hotter than it really is.
Fantastic. Well, let's distract ourselves by talking about something interesting then.
Okay. So today we're talking about something that was actually on the proposed list for a long time, but we only reached out to them recently, about NetCDF. And we have Ward and Russ here with us to speak to us. So guys, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Okay, this is Russ. I was one of the original authors, developers of NetCDF at Unidata with a guy named Glenn Davis. And he was tragically killed in an airplane accident in about 1999. So after that, I supported and maintained the NetCDF library and utilities for several years and developed a proposal with NCSA guy named Mike Folk to NASA to develop NetCDF 4, and recruited and hired some NetCDF development team members, including Ward, and wrote some blog entries about NetCDF. And I am passionate about it still. My Colorado license plate has been NetCDF for the last 10 years, which is one of the geekiest license plates anybody has.
Great. This is Ward. I'm a computer scientist. I worked with Russ for several years on NetCDF before his tragic retirement. NetCDF has become a passion of mine. My background is computer vision and machine learning, but my work with NetCDF here at Unidata has been very interesting. It's something that's easy to be passionate about.
So what is NetCDF?
Well, NetCDF was originally developed to kind of provide a standard interface between data providers and data users for scientific array-oriented data and metadata, and for portable data that was machine independent and platform and application independent. So the simple view is it's a file format and a data model and some APIs and freely available software that implement the APIs, so you can read and write NetCDF data. And together, those support the creation, access, and sharing of scientific data. There are some complications to that. There's lots of different APIs, and NetCDF has evolved over the 3 decades of use, so that it's now actually got some variants. But users usually don't have to worry about all those complications because of version compatibility and transparency. We've always developed NetCDF to keep it backward compatible with previously written data and previously written programs, so that when new versions are released, things don't break. And so I think, well, let me just mention a few of the APIs that language APIs that support NetCDF access. Originally C and Fortran, and then C++ and Java, and more recently Python. And then there's also R and MATLAB and Ruby interfaces. And there's lots of third-party software and utilities that can sit on top of NetCDF for data analysis and visualization and management.
So what does the CDF part stand for in the name?
Okay, well, the whole thing is Network Common Data Form. It was not really format, because we weren't really emphasizing the format. We were emphasizing the API originally. We wanted to be able to change the format underneath without people having to change their programs, but we wanted to still support all previous versions of the format. But people often call the CDF Common Data Format. And actually, there was an original software from NASA called CDF, and theirs really did stand for the Common Data Format. And we met with them and used some good ideas. What they had was a Fortran-only library that only was meant for VAX and VMS machines, and we thought there were such good ideas in that we wanted to extend it to C and make it portable for other machines, and also create a single file format for it, because the original NASA CDF was a multiple file format to store multiple variables in different files. So that's where it originally came from.
Now, you mentioned network is part of the name there, but in the same breath, you also say files. So which is it, or is it both?
It's really both. Files are containers for NetCDF objects that are real simple variables, multidimensional variables with their dimensions and some attributes. But the network, first of all, means that there is a network format originally based on Sun's external data representation, XDR, so that you can access data, the same data, on a network with machines that have different architectures and different ways of storing numerical and text data. And also, there's remote access to NetCDF data using what's called OpenDAP protocols, Open Data Access Protocol. That's been developed quite extensively with NetCDF, so that you can access data out of huge archives remotely, small amounts of large data sets efficiently through OpenDAP protocol requests. That's all underneath the API, so it's really no different than accessing data on your local machine, except you give a URL instead of a file name.
So NetCDF is probably best well known in the climate and other earth sciences community. What historical artifact existed that caused that to come about?
Well, I'm the historical artifact guy, so I'll take this question too. When it was first released, it became an ad hoc standard for sharing scientific data and metadata among modelers in climate, ocean, and atmospheric science communities, because it was at the right level for representing that kind of data. It had simple abstractions for variables and dimensions and attributes, and those three things were very important because a variable like temperature on a three-dimensional grid, and dimensions like latitude and longitude and time, and attributes like what units are the data in, were natural abstractions for the output of data models and for earth science data. So it was a good fit to represent multiple variables on shared grids, and even had the right abstractions to represent shared coordinate systems. There were other reasons for its popularity then. Mostly these things were written in Fortran, these early models, and C was becoming more popular. But these Fortran and C users we're seeing the disadvantage of using Fortran IO or byte-oriented C libraries to write scientific data, because it made their data not portable across platforms and languages. And NetCDF just provided an efficient, portable, language-independent IO APIs for Fortran and C users. And it had some other desirable properties too. The data was self-describing. It had metadata about the data in it. The file included ways to represent metadata. Of course, it was portable. It was scalable, which means that a small subset of a large data set could be accessed efficiently. You didn't have to read through all the preceding data. You could append data to a NetCDF file without copying the data set or redefining its structure, so that was efficient, adding a little bit of data to a big data file. It was remotely accessible, as I've mentioned, through these OpenDAP protocols, and this guarantee of compatibility with backward versions of the software made it a good thing for thinking about keeping archives of data. So I think those were the most important things. Later on, there was this development called CF conventions for NetCDF metadata that became an international standard for representing metadata in output of models and forecast models and simulation models. So that was also very important.
Okay, so what exactly then is the relationship between Unidata and UCAR and NetCDF? What was